President Yadip Desai, Vice President Paras, Devendra, Dipender, the Chairman of the Committee, Paresh Shah, past Presidents of the Chamber, Parival, other committee members, seniors and friends. It is always a delight to come on the platform of Chamber and give a talk, because I delivered my maiden lecture on the Chamber's platform. Today it's a little difficult task post lunch. Not difficult for you, for me, to keep myself awake. Well, in a way, post lunch session is good, because you are less likely to be evaluated. But when I saw the galaxy of speakers in the audience, I'm a little nervous. Well, I'm really happy that, Chamber has taken this initiative of organizing FEMA detailed course, which I believe is being organized after a long gap of time in Mumbai, maybe in India itself. Because this is one law. Few years back, we all thought is losing its importance on a way out. But as we go along in the presentation, we'll see that the challenges have mounted, in fact, in the recent past. The kind of amendments which have been coming has really made us, or rather increase our challenges in coping with the law. So what we are going to discuss this afternoon is about important definitions, the structure, rules and regulations of the Act. The structure of the Act, some of the definitions, and what I have done, that we are going to discuss some of the regulatory challenges. There are three types of challenges which I have identified: policy related, knowledge oriented, and maybe execution oriented. And how do we cope with these various challenges? So we shall deal with each one of them as we go along. When we come to the structure of the Act, it's one of the smallest Act, only 49 sections. In fact, when I was studying for my final CA exams, I thought this is good, only 49 sections, just master it and you can get full marks. But when I started off, reading section 1, 2, 3, by the time I reached to section 8 on the FERA at that time, I said better to leave in option. So, very small Act having a far-reaching implications. It's like a ghazal, In ghazal, only a couplet, okay, but having a deep meaning. Okay. And each time you read, each time you recite or listen to a ghazal, you will have a different meaning. Varsha is here, she would agree with me. Each time you listen to a ghazal, depending upon your mood, you will have a different meaning out of it. But here, if I try to give a different meaning each time a client comes to me, next time he will not come. But that apart, even though I said in lighter vein, but many times the same section I might have to interpret differently because of the RBI's clarification or some other circular which is coming, or if I might have discussed it and got enlightened, say I have to discuss it with my friends, Paresh or Naresh or so many other things. So, FEMA is one such law which gives us challenge each time we read it. Notifications. So many notifications have been issued. Many times notifications are issued after a long gap of the press release, or you get a circular but notification doesn't come. Now there arises a situation where you have an ADMA circular, Reserve Bank of India issued a circular which is actually essentially an instruction to the authorized dealers. Okay. So we read that circular, we find out that there are some amendments, but a relevant notification amending the act has not come. Now do you go by the circular or do you wait for the notifications to come? For example, for LLP, now press note was there, FDI policy contained in it, permission for investing in LLP, but there was no RBI notifications, which has come very recently now for investment into LLP. So till such time, what do? There are 1,000+ circulars. Ultimately, I have to write approximately because I don't know, by the time I deliver a lecture, some numbers might change. So, in fact, recently, not recently, but for past at least 6-7 years, or maybe after the FEMA came into place, RBI started one good system of issuing master circulars. Otherwise, it was very difficult to keep pace of the changes. Now, for all practical purposes, so for example, if I am looking at FDI, I'll just look at the master circular, which is supposed to contain all the amendments till 1st of July of the relevant year. But there poses also challenge, because there will be some changes in master circulars which are not supported by either notification or even ADMA circular. So what do? My job is not to frighten you. I am just saying that what are the challenges which we are facing in this particular law. So structure of the act is pretty simple. 49. Of course, you have gone through the overview of the FEMA, the purpose of the FEMA from FERA to FEMA. The objective is to now manage the foreign exchange. Okay, we have traveled a long way from FERA regime to a FEMA regime, a civil law in place. And one good thing is that we have a finest institution like Reserve Bank of India to deal with. You may get your answers late, okay, but you get answers, okay. And for that, we have one of the very finest institution, absolutely non-corrupt institution like Reserve Bank of India, which is one delight in practicing this law. Rules are made by the central government. The power of making rules, current account transactions within purview of the government of India. Because in 90s we have given an undertaking to WTO that India is open now on current account, meaning very few restrictions would be there on current account, and India will not withhold a legitimate demand of foreign exchange on current account. So that is our submission to WTO, and since then current account transactions are generally permitted unless specifically prohibited. Different rules are framed: current account transaction rules, adjudication proceedings and appeal, compounding of proceedings, encashment of checks, drafts, etc., and authentication of documents. One thing which you should remember about the authentication of documents, which I learned when I appeared before the enforcement officers. Any document which you receive in support of evidence, especially from outside India, it has to be countersigned by the Consular General, Indian Consulate Office, and must be notarized. Any document you submit to the even appellate tribunal, it must be notarized. Okay, so that you must remember whenever you confront a situation. Capital account transactions. See, some of the powers which central government has have been delegated to Reserve Bank of India. For example, compounding proceedings. Now, rules are framed, and then the powers are given to Reserve Bank of India for compounding of offences. Similarly, current account transactions. So, basic 31 notifications came when the FEMA was introduced on 1st June 2000. There are 31 notifications, and the rest of the notifications are derivatives of those notifications. Some of the notifications are replaced also. For example, overseas direct investment. Okay. So basic 31 notifications. Capital account transactions are governed by those notifications. Generally, it is said all capital account transactions are restricted. unless specifically permitted or allowed. As I said, master circulars on a relevant notification on a particular subject, with whatever limitations I said, it is still a very useful guide for anyone to find a recent law on that particular subject. What all you need to do, go on the basis of master circular, say pick up, suppose today we are discussing this on the 18th of April 2014. So the base circular would be 1st July 2013. And then you find out all the amendments till date. Some of my friends are doing a good job on BCS website. They are amending master circulars on a day-to-day basis. So if you want to have a recent law, you can visit the website of Bombay Chartered Society, and then you can find out master circulars or what are the amendments in the relevant circular or notifications. Then the FAQs. Again, Reserve Bank of India, to help people at large, they have issued FAQs on various subjects. Now here also there are some problems. If once you interpret a law, okay, and you go to FAQ, if there is a diverse opinion. Now FAQs are not binding as such, we know that. But that shows the interpretation. So whether you would go by your interpretation or you would go by the interpretation of which is given in the FAQ. You again, when you go to Reserve Bank of India, they say you take your call. When you ask for any clarification, they will say, oh, this is a notification, you go and read and you take a call. So that is again a challenge which we face. Nevertheless, it indicates the intention and interpretation. So if you want to take a conservative view, you may be guided by the FAQs. The first and foremost challenge comes, who's the boss? Whether the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. See, the consolidated FDI policy issued by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. Previously they used to issue twice, now it is once a year. Okay, consolidated FDI policy. Now that actually, see, any foreign direct investment or any investment into India in the business and industry is governed by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry. We had that industrial policy 1991, which was a famous industrial policy after the liberalization, governed by or prepared by the Ministry of Commerce and Industry, because that is the industry which governs the regulations or flow of investment or the development of industry and commerce in India. But the financial aspect of it means policy related. Okay, this particular industry, private investment is permitted, this particular area, incentives should be given, etc. So these are the, so they channelize the investment. But the financial aspect of it governed by the Ministry of Finance. In fact, earlier the Secretariat for Industrial Approval, SIA, and FIPB both used to be under the Ministry of Commerce, and now then they shifted to Ministry of Finance. So Ministry of Finance regulates the foreign investment, the financial part of it, and therefore the policy related changes are announced in the press notes in the FDI policy. Okay, and then RBI issues a notification. Now, for actual implementation of those policies. So many times we find, as I told you about the LLP. Now LLP, the investment was permitted by Ministry of Commerce and Industry under the consolidated FDI policy long back. But RBI very recently came out with the rules of investment by way of notification. Fortunately, in the last consolidated FDI policy, they have clarified this issue, that between the two, if there is any dichotomy, you follow the notification issued by the Reserve Bank of India. So now at least we know that, okay, we should go by. But what happens if somebody has made investments based on the assurance or whatever interpretation given in the press release? So there you might have a problem. Maybe RBI may take a legal view, and maybe when you go for compounding, they may levy a lesser penalty, or they may not levy a penalty. But this is one challenge which we are faced with till the time it is sorted out completely. Let's look at some of the definitions. Authorized person. Under FARA, it was only authorized dealer. Now authorized person is a much wider term, because in the FERA there was a money changer and authorized dealer, different terms. Now they have brought everything under one caption, and that is authorized person. So authorized person means an authorized dealer. Authorized dealer in a common parlance means a bank. Okay. But a banker, which that's an authorized dealer, money changer, offshore banking unit, or any other person for the timing authorized under subsection 1 of the section 210 to deal in foreign exchange or foreign securities. So this is the meaning of authorized person. Capital account transactions. Capital account transaction means a transaction which alters the assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities, outside India of persons resident in India, or assets or liabilities in India of persons resident outside India, and includes transactions referred to in subsection 3 of section 6. The major distinction between FERA and FEMA is this distinction between current account transactions and capital account transactions. In fact, if I were to tell you, in a nutshell what FEMA governs, FEMA governs what? Three things: securities, currencies, and properties. Property, security, and currency of a resident. Property, security, and currency of a resident which is situated or located outside India, or security, currency, or property in India in respect of a non-resident. So nowhere you will directly find the words, shares, etc. on securities. Foreign direct investment into securities. Then of course they define what is securities, shares, dividends, and everything. So currency includes foreign exchange, plastic money. So we'll see. FEMA is also applicable not only to Indian resident or Indian establishment owned by a non-resident, or establishment in India rather owned by a non-resident, but establishment outside India owned by Indian residents. Okay. And also a person who is present at that moment in India. So it not only covers the residents, but it also covers the person who is present in India. So it is applicable to whole of India. Now capital account transaction means what it says, which alters the assets or liabilities, including contingent liabilities, outside India of a person resident in India. So what is assets and liabilities? Currency, security, or properties. Okay. Or assets and liabilities in India of person residents outside India. Now here when we talk about assets and liability, we have to look at a macro perspective from the country perspective. Okay. We'll see the distinction between current and capital account transaction as we go along. Current account transaction. Current account transaction means a transaction other than a capital account transaction, and without prejudice to the generality of the foregoing. Such transactions include payments due in connection with foreign trade, other current business, services, short-term banking and credit facilities in the ordinary course of business. So, there may be some assets or liabilities which are created when you do foreign trade. For example, creation of debtors. Okay, when you do a foreign trade. So, in our normal parlance, when we look at our accountant's brain, assets and liabilities. Okay. So everything, from cash to stock to debtors and creditors, everything, alters. Whenever you do a transaction, assets and liabilities are altered. So if we apply that meaning, you cannot do any transaction. But what it says, there is an exception, that foreign trade, other current businesses, which is with now short-term banking and credit facilities. What is short-term? Generally not prescribed, but anything less than 12-month period is generally considered as a short-term banking facility. In the ordinary course of business, okay, then payments due as interest on loans and as net income from investments. Remittances for living expenses of parents, spouse, children residing abroad, and expenses in connection with foreign travel, education, medical care of parents, spouse, and children. Now, Now, for some of these categories, specific allowances are given under, rule Schedule 3, current account rules. That up to certain limit, it is freely permitted. Why this distinction is important? Why this distinction is important? Anybody can tell me? I gave you the answer. That current account transaction, India is virtually open on current account transaction. In fact, there was a time then India seriously thought of opening up its economy on capital account. And Tarapore committee was set up to suggest the roadmap for opening capital account converting. Of course, then the Southeast Asian currency crisis erupted, and then the entire exercise of or even decision to open a capital account has been postponed. So, what this FEMA has done, that they have opened, they have bifurcated all transactions into current account and capital account, and therefore, systematically, India can open its economy gradually, I would say, on current and capital accounts. For example, RFC account, resident foreign currency account. This account is fully convertible on capital account. You know that? Because if you have any balances in RFC account, you can buy properties. Today, barring that regulation which has come, recently, in the LRA scheme, liberalized remittance scheme. Previously, under $2 lakh scheme, one could buy a property. Now they have put a restriction, but otherwise, one can say that India is open on capital account up to $75,000. Means today you can give a loan to somebody. You can open a bank account abroad. You can set up a company abroad. So up to $75,000, India is open on capital account. For a NRI, up to $1 million, they can remit out of NRI account. So we are gradually opening up our economy because of this current and capital account classification. So let's look at the illustrative list of current account transaction. Import of machinery, if imported on COD basis. As I said in the earlier slide, that if it is foreign trade, if any transaction is of a foreign trade, it means if you are importing a machinery and making a payment, in your balance sheet you may capitalize it. Okay. But for the country it is a current account transaction. So please, capital account transaction does not mean the capital account transaction the way or we understand. And current account transaction is not equal to revenue transaction or revenue expenditure. Okay. So there is a distinction here. Import or export of goods on credit. Now same machinery, suppose for example, if you take a buyer's or supplier's credit beyond 3 years, it becomes a capital, the loan transaction becomes a capital account transaction. Import of machinery per se may remain a current account transaction, but a loan transaction where you are creating a liability beyond a year becomes a capital account transaction. Beyond 3 years because of the specific exemption in this buyer's and supplier's credit. In fact, it is actually for a year, and then the authorized dealer has power to extend it for a couple of years. So generally it is for 1 year, but buyers and suppliers credit, they have given time up to 3 years. Import and export of goods on credit. Payment for web hosting, payment for consultancy. So any kind of remittances on current account, like for example, interest, investment income, okay, dividend. The beauty of it, that even if the investment on which you earn the income is non-repatriable. Non-repatriable means you can't take it out outside India. Still, any income earned thereon is fully repatriable because it is considered, any income considered as a current account transaction. Short-term working capital from bank. Finish? You people are so fast in learning, huh? I am fast in explaining. Yeah, I know. I was waiting for this answer. Okay. Illustrative list of capital account transactions: term loan from banks, financial institutions, investments in securities, whether in India by non-resident or outside India, investments in immovable property. Current account transaction: any person may sell. Now section 5. Section 5 says that any person may sell or draw foreign exchange to or from an authorized person if such sale or draw is a current account transaction. Provided the central government may in public interest and in consultation with RBI impose such reasonable restrictions for current account transactions as may be prescribed. Today we have very few restrictions. For example, remittance for the sweepstakes, lottery, proscribed magazines, etc. One cannot, draw foreign exchange for the current, even though it is on current account, but you cannot draw foreign exchange on that. Even if you pay by your credit card, तो किसको पता चल जाना है? But the onus is on you. If Reserve Bank of India or anybody comes to know, because ultimately it's going to a banking system. So, those emails come now. You have won a lottery, $1 billion. Lot of emails come these days. So don't fall a prey to it. Okay. Then capital account transactions. So section 5 deals with the current account transactions. Section 6 deals with the capital account transaction. In fact, section 6 lists down what are the capital account transactions and authorizes Reserve Bank of India to formulate rules on that. So subject to the provisions of subsection 2, any person may sell or draw foreign exchange to or from an authorized person for a capital account transactions. Subsection 2 says, the Reserve Bank may in consultation with the central government specify any class or classes of capital account transactions which are permissible. I gave you an example of RFC account. Okay. Or the limit up to which foreign exchange shall be admissible for such transactions. So they may say like liberalized remittance scheme, like $1 million scheme for NRIs. Okay. Without prejudice to the generality of the provisions of subsection 2, the Reserve Bank may, by regulations, prohibit, restrict or regulate transfer or issue of any foreign security by a person resident in India, transfer of or issue of any security by a person resident outside India. So this is basically, the three things which I discussed in the beginning: foreign currency, security, and property. Okay. Transfer or security of any issue of any security or foreign security by any branch, office or agency in India or person resident outside India. Any borrowing or lending in rupees in whatever form. So borrowing and lending between a person resident in India and person resident outside India. Now here, this point E, the clause E, which reads any borrowing or lending in rupees in whatever form or by whatever name called between a person resident in India and a person resident outside India. Here the word Foreign Exchange Management Act is little misnomer. So what person thinks that there is a foreign exchange involved here. I am dealing with somebody non-resident in Indian rupees. Why foreign exchange should be triggered at all? So here, because even if it is a rupee transaction, because there is one resident and one non-resident, FEMA is involved. Why this particular restriction? This restriction is to curb the practice of, unlawful settlement, hawala, what we loosely call it. If you allow the rupee arm of the transactions and the foreign exchange arm of the transactions, if both the arms are allowed, either you don't have, if you don't have foreign exchange law, then there is nothing called hawala. Correct? Everything is permissible. Something which is prohibited and you do it, then it is an offense. So we'll see when we go to section 3, what it means. But otherwise, any borrowing or lending in rupees in whatever form or by whatever name code. So even if any rupee transaction between a resident and a non-resident is subjected to FEMA. Like in the FERA, we had something called Dhoni principles. Means all foreign exchange is welcome. We have poor, don't ask for foreign exchange. And then Finance Minister VP Singh in fact publicly admitted even offering a cup of tea to a non-resident was an offence. Under FERA, we had that kind of regime.